Okay, it's half past. Let's get started with the latest briefing on Tropical Storm Beta. Bottom line up front, not a whole lot has changed since this morning. Very little change in intensity and track, and also the forecast impacts. But let's go into some of the details now. Here's a look at the forecast track. You can see the system there still at 60 miles per hour, moving toward the west-northwest at 6 miles per hour, so it is moving a little bit quicker than it did earlier. Due to make landfall now, probably around early afternoon tomorrow, so that's maybe a little quicker than it had been forecast to come in. And then notice it makes that kind of hard right turn and draws back up the coast very slowly. There's some differences whether it tracks inland up the coast or maybe even a little bit out back over the Gulf, but you can see the cone there for reference, give you an idea of still some of the uncertainty in exactly how the track plays out. There is a large area of tropical storm force winds on the north side of the center. You see that in the orange shaded area, so some of those high winds already getting pretty close to the coastline. Looking at satellite, the system for a time today actually appeared to be trying to strengthen, getting a little bit better organized with some storms wrapped around the center, but just as quickly as it intensified, it tended to fade away again. Some of that dry air entrained into the system, so it's really still struggling out there over the Gulf and not really expected to intensify as it approaches the coast. There may be some more fluctuations like we had today, but overall still forecast to come in as a strong tropical storm. Vertical wind shear and dry air in the environment are inhibiting the intensification, so that's seemingly sort of protecting us from a stronger tropical cyclone. Here's kind of a close-up look at the track along with some time labeling and also the motion, the speed of motion labeled. And so you can see it there getting very close to Matagorda Bay around 1 p.m. on Monday as a 60 mile per hour tropical storm. So pretty windy conditions down there. That may also bump the surge up for a time during the day tomorrow. And then you could see the forecast is for it to head a little bit inland and then make that hard right turn and then draw up the coast. Notice by Wednesday 1 p.m. it starts to track to the northeast of the area. So at that time we should really start to see impacts winding down. But certainly a couple very stormy days, Monday, Tuesday into Wednesday. Also notice the speed of motion there as it is tracking up the coast, only 3 to 5 miles per hour. So slow moving tropical systems, as we know, can be really heavy rain producers. Here's a look at the radar as of about 45 minutes ago. And you could see from this morning we had a band heading our way. Well, it has pretty much crossed the area as an area of light to locally moderate rain. Not the kind of rain rates that would lead to any sort of flood concerns, but that was sort of our first brush with some rainfall from this system. You can see some lightning and heavier thunderstorms closer to the center. There's a band sort of near that swirl down there over the Gulf, and it's those heavier bands of convection and thunderstorms that we would need to be concerned about for any kind of flash flooding. And so those heavier bands closer to the circulation are what we're going to be dealing with in that Monday through early Wednesday timeframe. Looking at tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, you can see they're pretty much pegged. We're going to see tropical storm force winds and wind gusts really all along our coastline, even up into Louisiana. We've got some gusty winds even today, and they're going to go up further as we go into tonight and tomorrow. And those tropical storm force winds, meaning 39 miles per hour or higher, will extend a good distance inland as we go through the day tomorrow, especially wind gusts as you get inland. What about those sustained 58-mile-per-hour winds? Those are going to be more closely aligned with the center track. And so we're talking about Matagorda Bay up to Surfside as having the highest probabilities of seeing these 60-mile-per-hour winds, essentially. And those will extend a little bit inland, too, as the track makes landfall and it tracks further inland. But farther north, say in the Galveston Bay, greater Houston area, we're probably just a bit far north to get those high-end tropical storm force winds. Further up the coast for Houston and Galveston, we're looking at kind of the lower end of tropical storm force. Still significant, especially near the coasts, but not the highest of the winds. Looking at the tides, this is going to be our big issue for tonight. We've been talking about it for a few days now, and we are heading into that highest of the high tide cycles. Looking at the Galveston Bay entrance observed and forecast, we've seen values today up close to 4.5 feet. So that's well into the minor to locally moderate flood range. And that's going to go up another foot or 1.5 feet tonight. If you look carefully at this next peak here, it's kind of a broad peak up in that 5 to 6 foot range above mean lower low water. And that's an extended period of time. We're talking about a 12-hour period tonight where we're going to have high water from coastal flooding. And that could trap some folks in lower lying areas. It's going to flood some roads. We've already had some roads flooded. And so pretty significant impacts. This is going to be kind of a rough night for our coastal flood vulnerable areas. Now, with the storm lifting out on Wednesday, we should see improvement by then. But the high water is going to be only slow to improve. So there's going to be some high tides as well, certainly on Monday and into Tuesday, and then some improvement beyond Tuesday. Looking at some different points now that we haven't shown before, but same idea here. This is San Luis Pass. Again, heading into that highest of the high tides tonight. Really a long duration high tide event. The low tide, we really don't recover from it. We're up in that closer to 5 foot above mean lower low water for San Luis Pass, and that's 3 to 4 feet above mean higher high water. Looking at Freeport, again, more of the same. Won't spend a lot of time on these slides because we've been talking about them a while, but it is going to be this kind of rough period tonight. And into tomorrow, where the tide levels are going to be kind of at unusually high levels, up in that 5 to 6 foot above mean lower low water range. And of course, want to mention, I don't want to forget, there's a lot of heavy surf and wave energy on top of these elevated levels. So that's going to exacerbate the situation on the Gulf Coast, having surf and waves on top of these elevated tide levels. Sargent, you can see the peak values come down ever so slightly as you get farther south. That's a little bit unusual considering that's closer to the storm track. But the large area of tropical storm force winds north of the center is what's driving all this water onto land. And I would suggest these values near Sargent may end up being a bit higher due to the effects of the tropical storm itself as it's making landfall tomorrow. But same idea, elevated water levels tonight and tomorrow, certainly with the landfall, then improving after that. Morgan's Point, won't belabor this too much, other than to say, we're looking at 4 to 5 feet above mean lower low water, and about 3 feet or 3 to 4 feet above mean higher high water for that Sunday night and Monday into Tuesday time period for the bays. And finally, Galveston Bay Railroad Bridge, not too far from Pier 21, just kind of changing it up a little bit. You can see values there up, solidly 5, maybe 5 to 6 feet in that part of the bay. So this certainly would be relevant to bayside flooding for Galveston Island, West End, and Bolivar Peninsula. Once again, the period of concern really starting now and extending really through Monday. And then I know there's some improvement shown by Tuesday, but that's probably going to take until Wednesday to really see tide levels start to ease up. And this is a slight change. The Hurricane Center has written in a 3 to 5 foot above mean higher high water segment right up in our area, really from San Luis Pass to Sabine Pass. So that's kind of highlighting what we've been talking about, these very high tide levels that we've been forecasting and expecting in this zone. Oddly enough, not so much tied to the center track, but more from that large area of east to northeast winds on the north side of the track. And storm surge warnings all up and down the coast there in that purple area. Looking at the rainfall progression, we are seeing, of course, some rain today, and we do expect some heavier rain to push into the coast later tonight and through the day Monday. We'll see that rain shield from the system kind of work its way inland during the day Monday. Monday night and Tuesday, we'll likely see some heavy rain bands. You can see the forecast there in the upper right for Tuesday night and Wednesday. By then, probably most of the heaviest rain will be pushing out of the area by Tuesday night. So we're looking for improving conditions as far as the rain goes and the other hazards for that matter on Wednesday. Storm total, we're looking at in the area you see there in orange and red, we're looking at 6 to 12 inches of rain and locally up to 15 inches in any kind of heavier bands. We do expect the rain to set up in bands, especially as the storm gets close to landfall and after it makes landfall. Some of those bands feeding in off the Gulf are going to give us some of our highest rain rates. So again, 6 to 12 inches with locally up to 15 in the areas you see there painted in orange and red. And then as you go farther inland, those amounts drop off. So 4 to 6 inches in sort of the middle part of our forecast area, and then 2 to 4 inches in the northern areas. But I want to point out there's uncertainty here. There are some competing factors going on. You know, we have a slow-moving tropical system, and we think it's going to have adequate moisture after landfall, near and after landfall, to give us this heavier rain. But there is also some dry air that's complicating this storm as well. So it is possible these numbers may be adjusted up or down. It's a very complicated rainfall forecast. Based on that rainfall, you can see the areas of greatest concern for flash flooding there in red. Of course, that includes all our coastal counties and another tier inland. Yeah, that would include Harris County as well, and Fort Bend and so on. And then we have a slight risk surrounding that even for the next tier inland. So certainly with Tropical Storm Beta, flash flooding may be the next concern for us. As we're dealing with storm surge flooding tonight, we're going to have this rainfall on top of that as we get to very late tonight, tomorrow, and Tuesday. So it's kind of a combined hazard here of flooding rains and storm surge. That's going to make things especially difficult for our coastal areas. And then don't want to forget there is the possibility of a tornado or two is the way the Storm Prediction Center has worded it, mainly in this dark green area. We can get rotating thunderstorms typically on the right-hand side of the track, and you can see that's pretty much how it's lined up in their marginal risk for Monday. Sort of the idea here is those spiral bands that give us the heavier rain, there may be some rotating storms and brief tornadoes in those as well. So keep that in mind. So just to sum up here, we're looking at moderate coastal flooding tonight and Monday. It could be kind of an extended period of time where we have some roads that are flooded and impassable, and we could have some people cut off during that period. Heavy rain and flash flooding will be the next concern, and that from this slow-moving tropical system, the greatest risk also along the Texas and Louisiana coasts, where we do have a flash flood watch in effect. Although the amounts are still uncertain, we do have that potential for 6 to 12 inches of rain for the coastal counties, and then just a little bit further inland, with up to 15 inches possible in any kind of heavier bands that's set up over one area. We are looking at gusty winds all along the coast to tropical storm force. The strong tropical storm force winds, meaning 60 miles per hour or so, those are going to be confined closer to the track of the center, down in Matagorda County, perhaps Jackson County, up into the lower part of Brazoria County in the coastal areas. And we do have, of course, high confidence in this moderate coastal flooding. It's always been the highest confidence element here. We're getting more confidence in the track of the system, making landfall and then tracking just inland up the coast, and still high uncertainty in the actual amount of rain that falls, but the potential is certainly there for heavy enough rain and rain amounts to lead to flash flooding, especially in that coastal 2 tiers of counties. The threats should wind down on Wednesday, so that's kind of a quick summary of what we're dealing with here.